The fluorescent lights of the supermarket hummed, a stark contrast to the deafening silence that had just fallen over aisle 4. A terrified mother clutched her child against a display of cereal boxes. In the center of the lane, Officer Vance Harlan stood with his service weapon drawn, his knuckles white, the barrel leveled at a man holding nothing but a carton of organic eggs and a pack of ribeye steaks. Harlan screamed for compliance, convinced he had cornered a thug. He didn't know that the man in the hoodie was Special Agent Marcus Vale, or that the man standing directly behind Harlan, watching his career disintegrate in real time, was his own police chief. One trigger pull was about to change everything. Mornings in Oak Creek were supposed to be sacred. It was the kind of suburb where lawns were manicured to within an inch of their lives, and neighbors waved with aggressive friendliness. For Marcus Vale, it was the only time his phone wasn't vibrating with updates from the Bureau's field office in Chicago. He had spent recent months undercover in a high-stakes racketeering case that had taken him from the grid of the city docks to the polished boardrooms of corrupt logistics companies. Now finally rotated out and on mandatory leave, Marcus just wanted a grill. He pushed his shopping cart through the sliding glass doors of Fresh Mart, the air conditioning hitting him like a physical wall. He was dressed for comfort, not for work. He wore a faded gray hoodie with the logo of his old boxing gym, loose-fitting basketball shorts, and worn-out sneakers. To the untrained eye, he looked like just another guy running errands. To the trained eye, the way he scanned the room, noting the exits, the positioning of the security cameras, and the flow of the crowd might have given him away. But in Oak Creek, people rarely looked that closely. Marcus steered the cart toward the produce section. He needed bell peppers, onions, and corn for the grill. He picked up a red pepper, inspecting it for bruises. "Excuse me, could you reach that?" an elderly woman asked, pointing to a jar of artichoke hearts on the top shelf. Marcus smiled, his demeanor shifting instantly from alert to gentle. "No problem, ma'am." He grabbed the jar and placed it in her basket. "Thank you, young man," she said, adjusting her glasses. "You have a blessed day. You too." He moved on, his mind drifting to the ribeyes he planned to buy. He was going to use a dry rub, something spicy, maybe invite his brother over if he was in town. It was a simple plan for a simple day. 2 aisles over, Officer Vance Harlan was grabbing a donut and an energy drink. Harlan was years onto the force and already had a reputation. In the locker room, the older guys called him the hammer behind his back, and it wasn't a compliment. Harlan saw every interaction as a nail. He was 32, thick-necked with a buzz cut that he maintained with military precision, despite never having served in the military. He wore his uniform tight, the fabric straining against his biceps, his badge polished to a mirror shine. Harlan was on his break, but he never really turned off. He patrolled the supermarket aisles the way he patrolled the streets, looking for trouble, and if he couldn't find it, he was prone to manufacturing it. He had transferred to Oak Creek from a neighboring precinct under a cloud of conduct unbecoming, a detail that had been buried in union paperwork and sealed files. Here he felt like the king of the castle. As Harlan turned the corner near the bakery, his eyes landed on Marcus. Marcus was currently squeezing avocados, focused on finding the perfect level of ripeness. He didn't notice the officer at first. Harlan stopped mid-stride. He narrowed his eyes. In his mind, Oak Creek had a demographic, and the man in the oversized hoodie didn't fit the picture he had painted of this neighborhood. Harlan didn't see a federal agent on leave. He didn't see a man buying vegetables. He saw a threat. He saw a suspect from a BOLO he had skimmed weeks ago. A report for a robbery suspect described vaguely as a black male, athletic build, wearing sportswear. It was a description that could match thousands of men. But for Harlan, it was enough to ignite the adrenaline dump he craved. He tossed his donut into a trash bin, unfinished. He adjusted his duty belt, the leather creaking loudly in the quiet store. He began to stalk down the main aisle, his hand resting instinctively near his holster. Marcus tossed a bag of charcoal into the bottom of his cart. He hummed a tune, feeling the tension of recent months finally leaving his shoulders. He turned toward the meat counter, unaware that he was being hunted. The confrontation began with a shadow. Marcus sensed the presence before he heard anything. It was an instinct honed over years in federal law enforcement, the feeling of eyes burning into the back of your neck. He paused, his hand hovering over a package of ground beef, and slowly turned his head. Officer Harlan stood 10 feet away, legs spread in a power stance, blocking the exit of the aisle. "Can I help you, officer?" Marcus asked, his voice calm and level. He kept his hands visible, resting them on the handle of the shopping cart. He knew the drill. He knew how quickly situations like this could go sideways if he made a sudden move. Harlan didn't answer immediately. He took a step forward, his boots heavy on the linoleum. "What are you doing here?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Shopping, same as everyone else." "You don't live around here," Harlan stated, not asked. It was an accusation. "Actually, I do. Just bought the house on Elm Street about 6 months ago." Marcus kept his tone polite, but his eyes were assessing Harlan. He saw the twitch in the officer's jaw, the way his fingers drummed against his thigh near his weapon. Aggressive, insecure, dangerous, Marcus's mind cataloged. "Elm Street," Harlan scoffed. "Right, let me see some ID." Marcus sighed internally. He had his badge and credentials in his back pocket inside a leather wallet, but reaching for a back pocket in front of a twitchy cop was a good way to get shot. "Officer, my ID is in my back pocket. I'm going to reach for it slowly, okay? Keep your hands where I can see them," Harlan barked, his voice cracking the ambient quiet of the store. Shoppers at the end of the aisle froze. The elderly woman Marcus had helped earlier peered around a stack of soda cases, looking confused. "My hands are right here," Marcus said, keeping them on the cart handle. "I can't show you my ID if I can't reach for it. How do you want to handle this?" "I want you to step away from the cart now." Harlan unclipped the retention strap on his holster. The sound was a sharp snap that echoed. Marcus didn't move. He knew his rights, and he knew procedure. "Officer, I haven't committed a crime. I'm buying groceries. Unless you can articulate a reasonable suspicion that I've committed an offense, I'm going to continue shopping." It was the wrong thing to say to a man like Harlan. To Harlan, knowing the law was a sign of defiance. It was a challenge to his authority. "I said step away from the cart," Harlan shouted, stepping closer, closing the gap to 5 feet. "You match the description of a suspect involved in a robbery off I-95. Marcus knew the report. He also knew the suspect had been apprehended days ago. The update had gone out on the national wire. "That suspect was caught days ago, officer. Check your radio." "I don't need you to tell me how to do my job, boy." Harlan spat the last word with a venom that made Marcus's eyes harden. The air in the aisle changed. It wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It was personal. Marcus straightened his posture. He was 2 inches taller than Harlan and significantly more disciplined. "I'm going to ask you one time to lower your voice," Marcus said, his command voice slipping out, the voice he used to control raid teams. "You're making a mistake. The only mistake is you thinking you can walk away from me." Harlan growled. He grabbed his radio, but he didn't call it in. He just held it, using it as a prop to look busy, while his other hand went to the grip of his gun. "Turn around. Hands on your head." You're being detained for what? Disorderly conduct, failure to comply. I'm complying with the law, Marcus said. I'm not complying with an unlawful order. Harlan snapped. The calm defiance infuriated him. He drew his taser first, leveling the yellow plastic barrel at Marcus's chest. The red laser dot danced on the gray fabric of Marcus's hoodie. Get on the ground. Do it now or I will light you up. The supermarket had gone silent. A manager, a balding man named Jerry, came running from the front. Officer, please. What is going on? Back off, Harlan screamed, not taking his eyes off Marcus. This man is resisting arrest. Marcus looked at the taser, then at Harlan's eyes. He saw the panic rising in the officer. Harlan had escalated this too far, too fast, and now he felt he couldn't back down without losing face. That was the most dangerous moment in any encounter. Officer, Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave, deadly serious. I am a federal agent. My credentials are in my back pocket. If you fire that taser, you are assaulting a federal officer. Think very carefully about your next move. Harlan hesitated for a fraction of a second. Federal agent? The guy in the gym shorts? He looked at the sneakers, the hoodie. No way. He thought Marcus was bluffing. A lie to buy time. Liar? Harlan hissed. He holstered the taser and then, with a shaking hand, he drew his service pistol, a Glock 17. He pointed it directly at Marcus's chest. Gun! Someone screamed from the front of the store. Panic erupted. Shoppers dropped to the floor, scrambled toward the exits. Marcus didn't flinch. He couldn't. If he flinched, he died. He stared down the barrel of the gun, analyzing the threat. The safety was off. The finger was on the trigger. 4 pounds of pressure. That was all that stood between Marcus and a 9mm round tearing through his heart. Marcus calculated his odds. He could disarm Harlan. He knew the technique. A slap to the wrist, a pivot, a break of the elbow. He had taught it at Quantico. But at this distance, with a jumpy amateur, the risk of the gun going off during the struggle was too high, and there were civilians behind him. The elderly woman was still crouching by the soda cases. If the bullet went through Marcus, or missed, she was in the line of fire. So Marcus stood still like a statue. I'm counting to 3, Harlan yelled, his voice cracking. He was hyperventilating now. The tunnel vision had set in. He couldn't hear the ambient noise of the store anymore. He couldn't hear the manager pleading. He couldn't hear the heavy footsteps of Chief Donovan Hale pounding down the aisle behind him. 1, Harlan shouted. Brett, listen to me, Marcus said, using the name on the officer's nameplate, humanizing himself. My name is Marcus. I'm an FBI agent. Lower the weapon. 2. Harlan's voice boomed from behind the officer. It wasn't a request. It was a roar of authority that shook the shelves. Harlan flinched, his eyes darting momentarily to the side, but the gun stayed trained on Marcus. Stay back. I've got a suspect. Chief Donovan Hale didn't stop. He barreled into the confrontation zone, ignoring standard cover protocol because he knew who was holding the gun and who was being targeted. He stopped 5 feet to Harlan's left, hands up but palms open, projecting command. Officer Harlan, stand down, Hale barked. Harlan blinked, sweat dripping into his eyes. He recognized the voice, but his brain was misfiring. Chief, he's resisting. He matches the BOLO. He is a federal agent, you idiot, Hale shouted, his face turning a deep shade of crimson. Holster your weapon now. He's lying, Harlan insisted, the paranoia gripping him. He won't show ID. He's reaching. I'm ordering you to holster that weapon immediately, or I will shoot you myself. Hale's hand hovered over his own off-duty concealed carry at his waist. The ultimatum seemed to pierce through the fog in Harlan's brain. The chief was threatening him. The chief was here. Harlan looked back at Marcus. Marcus hadn't moved. He looked calm. Too calm. Slowly, agonizingly, Harlan lowered the gun. He didn't holster it, but he pointed it at the floor. "Save it and holster it," Hale commanded, stepping in and physically grabbing Harlan's shoulder, spinning him around. Hale ripped the gun from Harlan's loose grip, engaging the safety and tucking it into his own belt. "Chief, I was just—" "Shut your mouth," Hale hissed, his voice trembling with rage. "Turn around." Hale grabbed Harlan's wrist and twisted it behind his back. The handcuffs from Harlan's own belt came out. With a metallic click, the officer who had walked in as the predator was now the prisoner. Marcus finally let out a breath. He rolled his shoulders, the adrenaline leaving him with a slight tremor in his hands. He looked at Hale. "Took you long enough, Bob." Hale finished securing Harlan and looked up, his face pale. "I was in the wine aisle, Marcus. I swear to God. I didn't know it was you until I saw the hoodie." Harlan's eyes went wide. "Bob? Marcus?" He looked between the chief of police and the man in the gym shorts. You know him?" Hale shoved Harlan forward against a display of potato chips. "Know him? Officer Harlan. Meet Special Agent Marcus Vale. He runs the Organized Crime Task Force for the Bureau. He's also the man who trained me in crisis negotiation years ago." The color drained from Harlan's face so completely he looked like a corpse. I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't look," Marcus said, stepping forward. He reached into his back pocket slowly and pulled out his leather wallet. He flipped it open. The gold badge of the FBI gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "You saw a hoodie in skin color," Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous, "and you decided you were judge, jury, and executioner." "I was doing my job," Harlan stammered, trying to find some purchase on the crumbling cliff of his career. "You just played the race card to get out of a ticket," Marcus corrected. Hale ripped the badge off Harlan's chest. The pin tore the fabric of the uniform shirt. "Hey, that's my badge," Harlan protested. "Not anymore," Hale said. "You're done, Harlan. Fired on the spot. I want you out of my department before the sun sets." "You can't do that," Harlan yelled, struggling against the cuffs. "The Union—" "I am the chief of police," Hale roared, silencing the entire store again. "And you just assaulted a federal officer in front of 20 witnesses and your commanding officer. The Union isn't going to save you. You'll be lucky if you don't end up in a cell by tonight." Marcus walked up to Harlan, looking him dead in the eye. "You pointed a loaded weapon at me, Vance. You almost killed me. You almost killed that lady behind me." Marcus pointed to the elderly woman, who was now weeping softly, being comforted by the manager. "That's who you serve and protect?" Marcus asked. "You're a disgrace." Hale grabbed Harlan by the collar. "Let's go. We're going to the station." "And Marcus, grab your steaks. Dinner's on me tonight. I need to apologize for my department." As Hale marched the disgraced officer out of the store, the shoppers broke into applause. It wasn't a movie applause. It was a release of tension, a desperate thank you that no one had died. Marcus didn't bow. He didn't smile. He just picked up his basket, his hands still shaking slightly. He walked over to the elderly woman. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She looked up at him, her eyes wide. "He was going to shoot you." "But he didn't," Marcus said gently. "It's over now." But as Marcus walked toward the checkout, watching the flashing lights of the patrol cars arriving outside, he knew it wasn't over. Men like Harlan didn't just go away. They simmered. They plotted. And Marcus had a feeling that the hard karma the universe owed Vance Harlan was just getting warmed up. And there was something else. As Harlan was being dragged out, Marcus had seen a look in his eyes. It wasn't just fear, it was recognition. Not of Marcus, but of something else. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "This is Vale," he said into the receiver. "Run a background on a Vance Harlan, Oak Creek PD. Deep dive. I want to know where he was years ago. I think I've seen him before, and not at a traffic stop." Marcus had a memory scratching at the back of his mind. A raid in Detroit, a missing stash of evidence money, a rookie cop who had vanished from the scene before the feds arrived. If Harlan was who Marcus thought he was, getting fired was the least of his problems. The Oak Creek Police Precinct was a building of glass and brick, designed to look transparent and welcoming. But inside Chief Donovan Hale's office, the blinds were drawn tight, and the atmosphere was thick with cigar smoke and tension. It had been hours since the incident at Fresh Mart. Officer Vance Harlan sat on a metal folding chair in the hallway, stripped of his badge, his gun, and his dignity. He was technically a civilian now, waiting for the union representative who was likely going to tell him he was screwed. Every officer who walked past him averted their gaze. It was the blue wall of silence, but reversed. No one wanted to be associated with the guy who almost executed a federal agent over a carton of eggs. Inside the office, Marcus Vale sat opposite Chief Hale. Marcus had changed out of his gym clothes into a spare suit he kept in his car. He looked like the assistant special agent in charge that he was now, not the guy buying charcoal. "I pulled his file, Marcus," Hale said, sliding a manila folder across the mahogany desk. Hale looked tired. He rubbed his temples, a headache brewing behind his eyes. "Vance Harlan, transferred here years ago from a precinct outside Detroit. His record there was spotty, use of force complaints, insubordination, but nothing criminal, just a hothead." Marcus didn't open the folder immediately. He stared at the name on the tab. "Harlan," he muttered. "It's a common name, but the face. I never forget a face." "Marcus, you think you know him from before?" Hale asked, pouring 2 fingers of scotch into a glass and pushing it toward Marcus. "Years ago," Marcus began, ignoring the drink. "Operation Glasshouse. We were taking down the Voss crime family's distribution hub in Detroit. It was a joint task force, FBI, DEA, and local PD support. We breached a warehouse on the riverfront." Marcus leaned back, his eyes unfocused as he replayed the memory. "We found the drugs, kilos of it, but the cash was light. Our intel said there should have been $2 million in the safe. We found 1.5. $500,000 was missing." Hale frowned. "You think a cop took it?" "We suspected it," Marcus said. "There was a perimeter unit that reported clearing the back exit before the TAC team got there. A rookie officer. He claimed he saw someone running and chased them, but lost them. He was out of sight for maybe 10 minutes, long enough to stash a duffel bag in a trunk." "And you think that rookie was Harlan?" "I don't think," Marcus said, flipping open the folder. He scanned the personnel photo stapled to the first page. It was younger, less bloated, but the eyes were the same. Arrogant and beady. "I know. The name on the report was Officer B. Harlan, but he resigned weeks later. Said the job was too political. He vanished before internal affairs could grill him." Hale let out a low whistle. "So I have a thief and a racist in my department." "You had him," Marcus corrected. "He's gone now. But if he still has that money or if he's been living off it, that makes this federal. That's theft of government evidence and money laundering." Suddenly, the door to the office burst open. A man in a cheap suit, carrying a briefcase that looked like it cost more than his car, strode in. It was Leonard Briggs, the union attorney. "Chief Hale," Briggs announced, his voice nasally and irritating. "This is an outrage. My client has been terminated without due process. We are filing a grievance immediately. You can't fire a veteran officer for a misunderstanding at a grocery store." Hale stood up, his face reddening. "Misunderstanding?" He put a Glock in an FBI agent's face. "Allegedly," Briggs said, waving a hand dismissively. "My client feared for his life. He saw a suspect fitting a description. He followed protocol." Harlan appeared in the doorway behind the lawyer. He had changed into civilian clothes, jeans, and a tight t-shirt. He looked smug. The fear from the supermarket was gone, replaced by a toxic mix of defiance and entitlement. "You can't touch me," Harlan sneered at Marcus. "I got rights. I was protecting the community. You just played the race card to get out of a ticket." Marcus stood up slowly. He walked over to Harlan, invading his personal space. He leaned in close. "Do you remember the Riverfront warehouse, Vance?" Marcus whispered. The color drained from Harlan's face faster than it had at the supermarket. His smug smile vanished. "I don't know what you're talking about," Harlan stammered, his eyes darting to the side. "$500,000, Marcus continued, his voice barely audible. "Missing from the Voss safe. You were the perimeter unit. You resigned weeks later. You bought a nice house here in Oak Creek, didn't you? A big truck on a cop's salary." Harlan took a step back, bumping into his lawyer. "Let's go, Leonard. We're done here." "We're not done," Briggs protested. "We need to schedule the arbitration hearing." "I said we're leaving." Harlan grabbed his lawyer by the arm and practically dragged him out of the precinct. Marcus watched them go, a cold smile playing on his lips. "He's running," Hale observed. "He's terrified," Marcus said. "He thought he got away with the perfect crime. He thought he was safe in the suburbs. Now he knows the FBI is watching." "So, what's the play?" Hale asked. "Do we arrest him for the theft?" "Not yet," Marcus said, checking his watch. "We can't prove it yet. We need to find the money or what he bought with it. But I have a feeling Vance is about to make a very stupid mistake. A man like that, when he's cornered, he doesn't think. He reacts." Marcus pulled out his phone. "I'm going to put a surveillance team on him, 24/7. If he sneezes, I want to know about it. But I need you to do something for me, Bob." "Anything?" "Leak the body cam footage," Marcus said. Hale's eyes went wide. "What?" "That's against policy during an ongoing investigation." "Not the whole thing," Marcus clarified. "Just the confrontation, the part where he screams and points the gun, and make sure the press knows he was fired. Make sure they know his name." "Why?" Hale asked. "That will just make him a martyr to the anti-government crowd." "Exactly," Marcus said. "It will make him famous. And when you're famous, you can't hide. If the Voss family is still looking for their money, they watch the news too." Hale understood. It was a dangerous game. Marcus was using Harlan as bait to catch a much bigger fish, or perhaps just to let the universe deliver a punishment the law couldn't. "You're a cold son of a gun, Vale," Hale said. But he was already reaching for the phone to call the public information officer. He pointed a gun at me. "Bob," Marcus said, walking to the window to watch Harlan's truck peel out of the parking lot. "I'm just pointing the spotlight at him." By the next morning, Vance Harlan was the most famous ex-cop in America. The video of the confrontation had hit the internet like a nuclear bomb. The image of Harlan, veins bulging, screaming at a calm black man holding a carton of eggs, was plastered on every news site from CNN to Fox. But Harlan didn't hide in shame. He doubled down. Sitting in his living room, surrounded by empty beer cans, Harlan watched himself on the television. He was angry. He felt victimized. In his twisted worldview, he was the one who had been wronged. He had been stripped of his badge by a woke chief and a lying federal agent. His phone had been ringing off the hook. Most of it was hate mail, but some of it was support. A fringe cable news network, Patriot News Daily, had reached out. They wanted an exclusive interview. They wanted to hear his side. "I'll show them," Harlan slurred, grabbing another beer. "I'll burn that whole department down." He picked up the phone and dialed the producer back. "I'll do it," he said. "Tonight, prime time, but I want 50 grand for the appearance." The producer agreed instantly. That evening, Marcus Vale sat in his home office watching the live stream on his laptop. He had a headset on, connected to the surveillance team parked in a nondescript van down the street from Harlan's house. "Target is inside," the surveillance lead reported. "He's doing a remote interview via webcam. He looks agitated." On the screen, Harlan appeared. He was wearing a suit that was too tight, sitting in front of an American flag he had hastily pinned to his living room wall. The host, a man with bleached teeth and a spray tan, leaned into the camera. "Tonight, we have Vance Harlan, the officer fired for simply being vigilant. Vance, tell us what really happened." "It was a setup," Harlan lied, his eyes manic. "That guy Vale, he provoked me. He was reaching for a weapon. The video was edited, and now I'm out of a job. I have a family to feed. It's un-American." Marcus shook his head. "Keep digging your grave, Vance." "I served with honor in Detroit," Harlan shouted at the camera. "I cleaned up the streets, and this is the thanks I get. I have enemies, you know, powerful enemies, because I put bad guys away." Marcus froze. He mentioned Detroit. "Did you catch that?" Marcus asked the surveillance team. "We caught it, sir." Harlan was rambling now, fueled by alcohol and adrenaline. "I know things. I know where the bodies are buried. If the chief thinks he can silence me, he's wrong. I have insurance. I have a safety net." Marcus leaned forward. "He's talking about the money. He's bragging." Across the country, in a dim back room of a social club in New Jersey, an old man watched the same broadcast. He was 70 years old, breathing with the help of an oxygen tank. This was Silas Voss, the head of the family that had lost the Detroit warehouse years ago. He watched Harlan rant about his time in Detroit. He watched Harlan brag about his safety net. Silas turned to his nephew, a hulking man named Enzo. "Is that him?" Silas wheezed. "The cop from the warehouse report, the one who disappeared." Enzo pulled up a photo on his tablet. He compared the grainy surveillance shot from years ago to the HD video of Harlan on the news. "It's him, Uncle Silas. Same ears, same nose." Silas smiled, a cold, toothless grimace. "He stole $500,000 from us, and now he's on TV asking for sympathy. What do you want to do?" "Send a team to Oak Creek," Silas said. "I don't care about the money anymore. It's the principle. No one steals from the Voss family and goes on a talk show." Back in Oak Creek, the interview ended. Harlan slumped in his chair, feeling triumphant. He had told his truth. He checked his bank account online. The wire transfer from the news network was already pending. He felt invincible. He didn't notice the black SUV with tinted windows that rolled slowly past his house. He didn't notice that the surveillance van down the street had suddenly gone quiet as the FBI agents inside spotted the new arrival. Marcus's phone rang. It was the surveillance lead. "Sir, we have a situation. A black Escalade just did a slow roll past the target's house. Jersey plates registered to a shell company linked to organized crime." Marcus stood up, his heart racing. The trap had worked. The karma had arrived, but it was arriving faster and more violently than he had anticipated. "Do not engage yet," Marcus ordered. "Let's see what they do, but get the SWAT team on standby. If they breach the house, we move in." Harlan stood up and walked to his kitchen. He needed a drink to celebrate. He opened the fridge, humming to himself. He felt a vibration in the floorboards. A heavy thud came from the front door. Not a knock, a kick. Harlan froze. He reached for his hip, but his holster was empty. He had been fired. His personal guns were in the safe in the basement. Another kick. The wood of the front door splintered. "Open up, Harlan," a deep voice shouted. "We're here to collect the tax." Harlan's blood ran cold. He knew that voice, or rather, he knew the accent. It wasn't the FBI. It wasn't the police. It was the ghost of Detroit. He scrambled toward the basement door. His safety net, the duffel bag of cash buried under the concrete slab, suddenly feeling like a millstone around his neck. He had thought he was the hunter. He had thought he was the victim. Now, as the front door crashed open and 3 men in ski masks stormed into his living room, Vance Harlan realized he was just prey. He fumbled with the keypad to the basement, his fingers shaking uncontrollably. Karma, he thought wildly. This is it. But before the first intruder could reach the kitchen, sirens erupted from every direction. Blue and red lights flooded the windows, blindingly bright. "FBI, drop your weapons." Marcus Vale's voice boomed over a megaphone from the street. Harlan slumped against the refrigerator, sliding to the floor. He was saved. But as he looked at the FBI agents swarming his lawn and the mob enforcers freezing in his hallway, he realized the cruel irony. He was being saved by the very man he had tried to destroy, and that salvation was going to cost him his freedom for the rest of his life. Marcus walked through the open door, his weapon drawn but low. He stepped over the handcuffed mobsters and walked into the kitchen. He looked down at Harlan, who was weeping on the linoleum. "I told you, Vance," Marcus said, his voice void of sympathy. "Hard karma." Marcus reached down, not to help him up, but to slap a pair of handcuffs on him. "You're under arrest for theft of government property, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. And for your own safety, I suggest you plead guilty because these guys—" Marcus hooked a thumb toward the mobsters being dragged out. "They have friends in prison. But the FBI, we have solitary confinement. Choose wisely." Harlan sobbed, the fight completely gone. The interrogation room at the FBI field office was a cold, sterile box designed to strip a person of their sense of time and comfort. Vance Harlan sat at the metal table, handcuffed to a bolt in the floor. He was no longer the arrogant officer strutting through the supermarket, nor the defiant martyr on television. He was a man whose reality had fractured. Marcus Vale stood on the other side of the one-way mirror, watching Harlan twitch. Beside him stood Chief Donovan Hale. "He's been crying for an hour," Hale noted, his voice devoid of pity. "He keeps asking for his wife." "We brought her in," Marcus said, sipping coffee. "She's in interview room B. She didn't know about the money, Bob. We found the stash in the basement, exactly where the ground-penetrating radar said it would be. $500,000, vacuum-sealed, rotting inside a waterproof safe under the concrete. He poured the slab himself." Marcus opened the door and stepped into the room. The sound of the heavy steel latch clicking shut made Harlan jump. "Agent Vale," Harlan gasped. "Please, you have to help me. The Voss family, they know where I am. They know my face." Marcus pulled out a chair and sat down, placing a single file folder on the table. "You made sure everyone knows your face, Vance. That interview was the most expensive mistake of your life." "I was trying to get public support." "You were trying to feed your ego," Marcus corrected. "And now here's the situation. We have the money. We have the forensic accounting linking your cash purchases, the truck, the renovations, the boat to the serial numbers from the Detroit bust. You are looking at 20 years for the theft and laundering alone. Add another 10 for the assault on a federal officer." Harlan put his head in his hands. "My life is over." It gets worse, Marcus said, leaning in. We showed the evidence to your wife, Sarah. We showed her the dates. You stole that money weeks before your daughter was born. You told Sarah you got a bonus and an inheritance. You built your entire life in Oak Creek on a lie. Harlan looked up, panic in his eyes. Where is she? I need to explain. She doesn't want to see you, Marcus said. She's filing for divorce, Vance. She's taking the kids. She said she refuses to raise them in a house built on stolen drug money. She's already packing. The color left Harlan's face. This was the true impact of his karma. It wasn't just prison. It was the total erasure of his legacy. The family he claimed to protect with his vigilance was destroying itself to get away from him. But I have information, Harlan, desperate, shouted. I can give you the Voss operation. I can be a witness. Marcus shook his head slowly. We don't need you, Vance. When the Voss hit squad came to your house, we arrested them. They're flipping on Silas Voss right now to avoid kidnapping charges. You are irrelevant. Marcus stood up and walked to the door. Wait, Agent Vale, Harlan screamed, rattling the chains. Don't put me in general population. The Vosses have reach. They'll kill me in the showers. You know they will. Marcus paused at the door. He looked back at the man who had pointed a gun at him over a carton of eggs. He remembered the fear in the elderly woman's eyes at the supermarket. He remembered the centuries of history that led to men like Harlan feeling entitled to judge and execute on sight. You're right, Marcus said coldly. They will try to kill you. He opened the door. That's why I'm recommending administrative segregation. Solitary confinement. For your own protection, of course. Harlan's eyes went wide with a new kind of horror. Solitary for 20 years? That's torture. It's safe, Marcus said, stepping out. And you'll have plenty of time to think about that BOLO report you lied about. The door slammed shut, sealing Harlan in the silence he would have to endure for the next 2 decades. The trial months later was a media circus, but short-lived. The evidence was overwhelming. The video of the supermarket incident was played for the jury. They watched Harlan scream, escalate, and threaten. Then they saw the photos of the stolen money. The defense attorney, Leonard Briggs, tried to argue PTSD and stress, but the jury wasn't buying it. The verdict was guilty on all counts. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Reynolds, looked over her spectacles at the disgraced officer during sentencing. Mr. Harlan, you wore a badge that represents the public trust. You used it as a shield for your bigotry and a cover for your greed. You are a disgrace to every officer who serves with honor. She sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. As the bailiffs led him away, Harlan scanned the courtroom. He was looking for Sarah. He was looking for his friends. The pews were empty. Only one man sat in the back row, Marcus Vale. He watched Harlan be led away in chains, his expression unreadable. He wasn't there to gloat. He was there to ensure the paperwork was finished. Years had passed since the flashing lights of the squad cars had illuminated the dark corners of Elm Street, but time had done its work in Oak Creek. The seasons had washed away the stain of the scandal, replacing the tension with the quiet, rhythmic hum of suburbia. The sprawling house that Vance Harlan had bought with stolen money, a monument to his own greed and ego, no longer belonged to him. It had been sold at a government auction to a young couple, a high school teacher and a pediatric nurse. They had no idea about the dark history buried beneath the basement concrete, nor did they care. They had repainted the aggressive gray exterior with a warm, welcoming shade of butter yellow. They tore up the sod where the FBI surveillance van had once idled, planting a chaotic, vibrant garden of wildflowers and hydrangeas. The bad energy that Harlan had cultivated was scrubbed away, replaced by the laughter of toddlers running through sprinklers and the smell of fresh mulch. The neighborhood, once on edge, had exhaled. Sarah, Harlan's ex-wife, had done her own scrubbing. She had moved 2 states away, putting hundreds of miles between herself and the humiliation of the trial. She had reclaimed her maiden name, a shedding of skin that felt like a rebirth. She went back to school, earning a degree in social work, driven by a need to understand the kind of brokenness that had consumed her husband. She was raising her children differently now. They rarely spoke of their father. To them, he was a ghost, a shadowed figure in a photo album that was kept on a high shelf. When they asked, Sarah told them the truth, but she told it gently, that their father was a man who had lost his way because he judged the world by its cover rather than its contents. She was teaching them to see the heart, not the hoodie. Marcus Vale had also moved on, though his transition was one of professional evolution rather than escape. He had retired from field duty, trading the high-stakes adrenaline of undercover work for the lecture halls of the FBI Academy in Quantico. He was now Section Chief Vale, a title that carried weight and respect. In a tiered auditorium filled with eager young cadets, Marcus often projected a video onto the massive screen. It wasn't for entertainment. It was the body cam footage from the Fresh Mart in Oak Creek. He used the supermarket incident as case study 42. "Watch the escalation," Marcus would tell the silent room, pointing his laser pointer at the screen where Harlan was screaming, veins bulging. He isn't reacting to a threat. He is reacting to his own bias. He sees a predator because that is what he projects onto the world. The most dangerous weapon you carry is not the Glock on your hip. It is your mind. If your mind is broken, you are not an officer of the law. You are just a bully with a badge. On a crisp Sunday morning, Marcus found himself back in a supermarket. He was living in a quiet town in Northern Virginia now, a place where the air smelled of pine and rain. He pushed his cart through the produce section, the wheels gliding smoothly over the polished floor. He reached for a carton of eggs. Then he steered toward the meat counter for a pack of ribeyes. It was a mundane routine identical to that Sunday years ago. As he turned the corner of aisle 4, a phantom memory washed over him. For a split second, the fluorescent light seemed too bright, the air too still. He heard the ghostly echo of a holster unsnapping, the phantom vibration of a scream. "Excuse me, sir." Marcus froze, his muscles coiled, a dormant instinct flaring to life. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning for a threat. A police officer stood there. He was young, perhaps 24, with a fresh, open face and a uniform that fit him loosely. He wasn't blocking the aisle. He was standing politely to the side. Marcus tensed, his breath catching in his throat. The trauma of the past was a scar, faded, but not gone. "Yes, officer?" The young man smiled and the tension in the air shattered. "I think you dropped this back by the peppers, sir." He held out a plastic loyalty card that had slipped from Marcus's pocket. Marcus looked at the card, then up at the officer's eyes. There was no suspicion there, no aggression, just a young kid doing a small kindness. Marcus exhaled a breath he felt like he'd been holding for half a decade. His shoulders dropped. "Thank you, officer," Marcus said, taking the card. His hand was steady. "No problem. Nice steaks," the officer noted, glancing at the cart. "Grilling out?" "Yeah." Marcus smiled, and this time the smile reached his eyes, celebrating a quiet Sunday. "Best kind there is. Enjoy it, sir. Have a good one." The officer nodded respectfully and walked away, continuing his patrol, waving at a cashier as he passed. Marcus stood there for a moment, watching him go. The system wasn't perfect. It was still broken in 1,000 ways, and the work was far from done. But the hammers, like Harlan, were being replaced slowly by men like this. Marcus placed the stakes in his cart and walked toward the checkout. He didn't look back. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, the world was a very different shape for inmate number 89402. In the bowels of the ADX Florence Supermax prison, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, Vance Harlan sat on the edge of a poured concrete bunk. He had aged 20 years and 5. His hair was gone, leaving a shiny, pale dome. His skin, once flushed with the ruddy complexion of a man who spent his days outdoors, was now pasty and translucent, starved of sunlight. He spent 23 hours a day in a 7 by 12-foot cell. The walls were soundproof, poured concrete. The door was solid steel. There were no bars to look through, only a narrow slit of a skylight 4 inches wide that showed a sliver of gray sky. He couldn't see the mountains. He couldn't see grass. He couldn't see other people. His protection from the Voss crime family was absolute. It was the safety of a coffin. Every day was a loop of crushing monotony. He replayed the moment in the supermarket 1,000 times. He replayed the rush of power he felt when he drew his gun. He replayed the moment he decided to hunt Marcus Vale. He replayed the theft in Detroit, the weight of the duffel bag in his hands. He realized now in the deafening silence that the money had been cursed. It hadn't bought him freedom. It had purchased the stone tomb. A heavy metallic clank signaled the arrival of the guard cart. A tray of food slid through the slot in the door. "Chow time, Harlan," a guard grunted from the other side. The voice was muffled, distant. Harlan shuffled to the door. He was desperate for any human connection, even a hostile one. "Officer. Hey, officer. Can I get an extra blanket? The vent? It's blowing cold air right on my neck." "Request denied," the guard said, his footsteps already retreating down the hall. "Just talk to me," Harlan whispered to the steel door. "Please." But there was no answer. Just the hum of the ventilation system. Harlan sat back down on the concrete slab. He looked at his food, a dry turkey sandwich and a bruised apple. He picked up the apple. It was mealy, tasteless. He closed his eyes and tried to remember the taste of the maple donuts he used to eat in his patrol car, the ones he would buy while on the clock. He tried to remember the feeling of the steering wheel under his hands, the weight of the badge on his chest, the way people used to look at him with fear and respect. But those memories were fading, eroding like sandstone in the wind. The hard karma wasn't the violence of the mob. It wasn't a beating in the shower. It was the absolute, total indifference of the universe. Vance Harlan had screamed for attention his whole life, desperate to be the main character, the hero, the martyr. Now he was nothing. He was a number. The world had moved on without a backward glance. The sun was shining on Oak Creek. The flowers were blooming in his old garden, and he was just a ghost in a concrete box, waiting for a tomorrow that would look exactly like today. That afternoon, the smoke from a charcoal grill rose into the blue Virginia sky. Marcus flipped the ribeyes, the fat rendering and sizzling on the grates. The smell was rich and comforting. His brother, who had driven down from Maryland to visit, stood next to him, holding a cold beer. They watched the trees sway in the wind, enjoying the simple, profound liberty of a Sunday afternoon. "So," his brother said, leaning against the deck railing, "I saw something on the news about prison reform the other day. It made me think. You ever hear what happened to him? That guy, the cop from years ago?" Marcus looked down at the coals glowing red. He watched the flames lick at the meat. He thought about the file in his office, the one he had closed years ago. He thought about the face of the man who had tried to take his life over a carton of eggs. Then he looked up at the sky. "Who?" Marcus asked. His brother paused, then laughed, a deep, easy sound. "Right, forget I asked." Marcus took a sip of his beer. "I already have." He turned back to the grill. The steaks were done perfectly. It was time to eat. The story of Vance Harlan is a brutal reminder that authority without integrity is just bullying in a uniform. He allowed his prejudice and greed to dismantle his life, believing he was untouchable until the moment the handcuffs clicked. In the end, karma didn't just strike him down, it erased him. He lost his career, his family, his freedom, and even his name, becoming just another number in the system he tried to abuse. It serves as a powerful testament that while the wheels of justice can be slow, they grind exceedingly fine. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Share this video with someone who believes in real justice. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story when the next part drops.